All right, welcome to another episode of New Wine Uncorked. And hey, it's the new year, and this is exciting 2022. I don't know how you two are, but I'm always excited about new things. But when I think about new things, I also get excited about it because it's connected to the past. And so the new year brings about the opportunity for newness. And so obviously new wine, new wineskins has that aspect of new there. But if you looked at the biblical scripture of what new wine, new wineskins is drawing into, it actually connects with the old, because new wineskins are partnered with and paired with old wineskins, and they're both used for a specific purpose. And so today we want to kind of talk about that, like where we have this new year, 2022 is upon us. And I've heard there's a lot of discussion when it comes to New Year's. You know, people talk about resolutions and they talk about, oh, hey, yesterday's behind us, let's move forward. And for the Christian, though, the Christian church, the past means something, you know, and it's from the past that we can look back and we learn from our mistakes. There's this saying that, you know, those who don't understand the past are destined to repeat the same mistakes. And so we need the past, but then also we don't want to become encumbered. We don't want to become tangled up in the past so much so that we only live from yesterday and we don't live today. And so for those who might know the church calendar, January 6th, you know, there's December 25th is the traditional day that the Christian church celebrates Christmas. And then the 12 days after that, we have this thing called leading up to Epiphany. And the 12th day after Christmas, January 6th, is called Epiphany. And this is the truth of God manifesting himself. And so this is where typically we talk about the baby being presented to the wise men, to the magi. And so with this manifestation, a presentation of God in human, what does that mean for us today? I mean, I know there's a lot of talk sometimes within the Christian church about like how the human is not good. But doesn't Christmas tell us something different? That, you know, so yes, we needed God, but God saw that our humanity was good enough, though, for him to step into. And so that should say something for us today. The last couple of years have been kind of up and down and tumultuous. And now with 2022 starting, we want to, you know, schools are starting again and we're all excited. And yet, whoa, people are feeling like, whoa, now we have to pull back maybe because of rising cases. And the hope was maybe if we just said it was a new year, COVID would be gone and we could just like blink our eyes and say, no. And we just, if we don't think it, we don't talk it, we don't, you know, then hear no COVID, see no COVID, be no COVID. And that's not the case though, right? So we live in the reality. And so again, we want to talk about, so if God manifests himself and saw fit to become human, there has to be something good and redeemable about our humanity. Do I, as a follower of Jesus Christ and called to be a lover of you and the rest of our humanity, do I live out the truth that there is something good in our humanness, in my humanness, you know? And so I'm not sure how each of you jump into the new year, but is it something that when you think about the new year, you're always focused on, ooh, what's the newness of this year? Or do you have a connection to yesterday where you want to continue things, allow things maybe to become, you know, so things that started, or my transformation that started last year. Last year was a hard year for a lot of us, but it was still good in the sense that there were things for me to learn from, and we don't want to just discard it. So when you enter into the new year, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to, especially too, when we talk about God's manifestation? Do you pause and allow that to say, oh, what is the Lord going to do this year? Or how do you tackle, you know, the new year, 2022? And what are some of your thoughts for this upcoming year in connection to last year? So Jim, Kayla, where are you at with 2022? It's about right. It's how everyone is. They're just like, wait, new year? No, Jim, you're muted.
Oh, I thought I unmuted. You know, I appreciate what you said just about looking back, because in indigenous cultures, especially Native Americans and Hawaiian cultures, there's kind of this 7 generations, right? So you look 7 generations back, but also all your plans are based on how it's gonna affect the next 7 generations. And so I think that, you know, for culturally, and I think even, scripturally, although we don't do it as well, it is important to look back at our past. It is to reflect on our past. And not only just what the bad things that happened in the past, but what are the good things? What are the good things? And like Sunday, like for me, Sunday morning, as we gathered at church, I said, hey, welcome to 2022. We made it this far. And, and there is a sense that we could make, and I can say, it's like, we made it this far because there was so much to go through. There was so much that we got through, but God saw us this far. I know at the risk, that there's some people who have lost family members like myself, and, but we address, I think, we need to just be reminded of, God's hand is still in it, where it's the mystery of what and why. But I think, for me, I look back at the past and think, wow, we made it through this. And I think it's, we made it through it because of, for me, it's others. I mean, even though we were in Zoom, it was just the others. It's the community of faith. And even the community outside of faith, there's people that we just, hang on to. So I think, it is so important to look back. And for me, I think what's helping me is that I'm starting a new series, and it's going to take us through John. It'll take us through John. It's, it's kind of a narrative lectionary, if you will, but it's through John. And last week, Sunday, I preached, it was when Jesus says, come and see, And so, for me, I think 2022, it's, and I challenge our church, I'm challenging myself, is just come and see, come and see Jesus in fresh new ways. I think, and it's good for me because, as we've been on the journey for a long time, it's so easy to say, okay, this is what Jesus is, this, but man, Jesus took us the Trinity took us through this difficult time, together. So, I guess I'm anticipating kind of this come and see. And there's that mystery, right? I mean, isn't that what we always talk about, is the mystery? And so there's that mystery of, okay, what do we get to see? And so I'm not necessarily, I've got my resolutions, like I need to work on my diabetes and things like that, but I think it's more for myself, but not the expectation of God, this is what I want to see. But it's just to say, okay, as we enter into the mystery, I'm here to come and see. And so, and I'm anticipating something fresh. So.
Yeah, I think that's exactly kind of where I'm at too. I was talking with my sister-in-law on the phone a couple of days ago, and it's kind of funny how, like, I feel like it is kind of a trend almost, where the new year comes, and I myself included, you do like a flashback on the previous year, and you like kind of go through. So I went through 2021, and I was talking with my husband, and he was like, yeah, I know that like 2021 was supposed to be like this really like hard year, but it was probably one of the best years of my life. Like, he was like, we got married, now having a baby, like I love where I'm at in life. Like, I'm going to school, I have a good job. Like, I don't have a lot more that I could ask for, like, so for us, reflecting on 2021, and my sister-in-law got married too. So we've had like just weddings and babies and pregnancies, and like a lot of love, and a lot of people and family and life. And it's been a lot of joy, even amidst the chaos and the loss and the suffering that has gone on and that we have experienced. We've still gotten that joy that comes again in the morning. And that's kind of been, that was my perspective in 2021. And she was like, do you set New Year's resolutions? Like, I don't know. I've never really set like, here are my 3 resolutions for the new year. But I told her, I was like, I just want to continue to like work on like taking care of myself fully, like mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Like, what does that look like for the day to day? Does that look like working out or getting some movement in to take care of my body, reading my Bible every day, spending time, with Jesus, whether that's reading the Bible, praying, just like meditating. I do a lot of like listening to worship music and just praying through that. And so just doing something every day to take care of myself as a whole is kind of, I guess, if I had to say, a New Year resolution, but I feel like that's an every year resolution. And it's probably going to be my ongoing resolution. But it's been cool to look back on this past year, and we wouldn't have the joy of 2022 and the expectation for 2022 without 2021. And so I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to see what God has in store for 2022. And it is that come and see, that anticipation that thy will be done, because you have a will and a purpose and a way for my life and the lives of others in this new year. And so I want to be available to see that, to hear it, to be present in that. And that's kind of just where I'm at for 2022. Be present and be ready for what God has.
I want to add really quickly too. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's like a great, I mean, maybe to encourage people, just taking the time to just reflect on 2021, because, you know, I did it maybe about a month ago or a couple months ago, but, you know, I mean, you're right. There's a lot that's gone on, but you know what, in the midst, I mean, we went through a lot. You know, I mean, it was, you know, and you talk about kind of these, you know, the weddings and things, the anticipation and the, you know, pregnancies and all those things. And while those are wonderful and beautiful things, but even in the midst of that, I mean, to be pregnant during COVID, I mean, it's like, oh my God, you know, but I mean, to be able just to reflect, I think you know, to do what you did is to reflect upon 2021, because I think we have a mentality of like, wow, here we are, let's start off anew. You know, you brought that up, Matt. But I think when we look back and think, wow, because when I look back, I thought, wow, we went through a lot. And, you know, when we pause and kind of think about that, and, you know, I guess in a way it can be encouraging, and to think, you know what, we did go through a lot and God did get us through. And I think, you know, that's even the story of the Old Testament. It's like, you guys, you forgot, you know, you forgot. And so, but I think, you know, I just want to encourage people, I think with what Kayla did, I think we just need to pause and reflect upon 20, you know, not to say, okay, what was the bad things, but just like what you're saying. And I don't know what you did, but just allowing those things to bubble to the top and just to reflect upon them, both good and bad, but to come to the realization that was a lot. You know, that was a lot, and that we are here, that God has gotten us through. And, you know, and so I think with the hope, with looking at that, to say, he's the same God today, yesterday, and even tomorrow. And so
Yeah,
I wanted to add that.
No, I think that's important, because you look, so with, was talking with a group of people, you know, New Wine does a Tuesday morning on Clubhouse, the mobile app. And we were talking about this, you know, Epiphany is the church event that we celebrate with on the, you know, the church calendar, God's manifestation. But so it's this memory, you know, we recollect, you know, like, geez, holy cow, that's one of those words you're like, wait, I'm trying to think about it as I'm saying it. So we recollect, we have memory, we remember, right? But then looking forward, there's this anticipation. So the present rests right within that memory and anticipation, you know, and yesterday, today, and forever, you know, it's the same, but it's still moving. And that, you know, if you get into philosophy, there's a couple of philosophers, one dude named Heraclitus, who says that things always in flux, they're changing. And then the one guy, Parmenides, says that they're oneness, like there's stability, everything is the same. And so they have this discussion, and the Christian theologians say this is our God, is that the oneness of God is the same and stable, but then there's change within God because of the threeness and relationality, that there's change, meaning that there's an openness. God opens himself up to the human, and so that the baby presented to the wise men is the baby presented to the world, you know, and it's the presentation of good. We talk a lot about in today's culture, and especially today's politically charged climate, who is good and who is bad. You know, our time, we lived in Scotland for some time as I was working on my degrees, and they would literally have the goodies and the baddies, and the teachers would separate out the children, and you children are baddies today, and they would be reprimanded and disciplined, and then the goodies got like the, you know, treats, and they were praised, and it was just so as humans, sometimes we don't understand just how, like, it doesn't have to be brutally and obnoxiously violent for us to be evil towards one another, it's just in our comments. It's in the way in which we neglect one another. When I'm driving on the road, I can choose not to see the family or the dude on the corner who's in need. Okay. I can choose not to see them. I can also choose to create in my own narrative as to why I'm not going to help this person. Because if I give them a buck, or if I give them something, they're going to go and take it and buy booze. They're going to buy sex. They're going to gamble. They're going to do whatever. So I can't help them out. Right. And so I think this narrative of, well, if God saw fit to become human, there's got to be something redeemable within me, right? And do I live that out? And so as we're talking about this memory of what you were saying, Kayla, and exactly what you're saying too, Jim, is that if I'm not intentional on pausing and to see the goodness, the manifestation of God in my life, then how can I ever hope to look at each one of you and see Jesus in you? Because I'm not even seeing him in my life, And so then what I find, at least this is just for me, is when I do that and I get more focused on myself, I tend to get irritable, and everything just, I don't, you're an irritation because in my mind, you're getting something. And I'm like, well, come on, God, where am I? And so we make these resolutions. And sometimes I think the problem with resolutions is they're so based on me that then we make resolutions with God. Hey, you know what, this year, for this month, Lord, I'm going to give up this. I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to gamble. I'm not going to speed. I'm not going to look at porn. I'm not going to say a nasty word to my brother. I'm not going to, whatever it is, right? We make these resolutions as if we're making almost a deal with God. I go 30 days, clean and sober, and then you bless me, Lord. Okay. And so, like, I want to be mindful that is my resolution of the year, first and foremost, to love the Lord my God, and on my run yesterday, I was thinking about that. As God manifests himself to human, what is he asking the human? Like, is he presenting more than just himself? Is it a question to us? At the end of his life, Jesus says to Peter, who do you say I am? Is that the same question in the manger? Like, not only who do you say I am, but this God says that he is love. And love is one of those terms that I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is love? So as I remember yesterday and look forward to tomorrow, I'm thinking also intentionally, but what does that mean for me today, in 2022, where the Lord's placed me in my time and my place with the people around me? There has to be some reason for this, but can I really even understand that if I never stop and pause and do exactly what you two were saying, is being intentional on what the Lord's put in front of me? And how do we notice that, right? Like, how we were talking even before Christmas, remember, about pausing and being intentional. What are some of the things, though, that we do, that we think we do to be intentional, but really then is putting ourselves in front of God? It's amazing to me how maybe over these last couple of months, maybe even this last year, I feel like there could be more time in my life, and I know this, where I should have been pausing and reflecting, but that's prayer. And so there's little things where people are like, I don't know, God, I keep asking. And yet, if I'm honest with myself, I go, well, wait a minute, I'm not doing what God has called me to do. But then there's that tension, like I just said, because we don't want it to be duty-based based on, well, if I do this, then God will bless me. Isn't God blessing us now? But what does that look like? What do those blessings look like? Because Kayla, as we've been talking through, like some of the things that you've been wonderfully able to experience through pregnancy, you might not say, this is a joy. I mean, I appreciate smelling food and then thinking about vomit, right? And yet I guarantee throughout this in after the whole experience, baby's born, anytime someone asks you, well, so what about it? It's going to always be a beautiful thing, 20 some odd years into being a parent, even with you, like we've had wonderful times of disagreement and, hey, you think this way and I think this way. And yet both of us would probably say, yes, but throughout the course of the time together, it's been a beautiful journey, right? How do we allow that to where the darkness or the struggles don't overtake that anticipation of tomorrow, but are not forgotten, because I am who I am through my suffering, through my struggles. Just like one of the titles that I think should be totally meshed within the baby in the manger is the man of sorrows. There's a baby born into sorrow expectedly, so, but yet it's not a dark thing, it's a joyous thing. And so how do we continue to step into that tension of living for today, throughout that?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about this morning, because I was praying as I was getting up. I was like, okay, Jesus, please don't let me throw up today. Please just take away all the nausea, take away and that has been my prayer. Every single morning I spend a solid like 5 to 10 minutes just before even climbing out of bed, like just in prayer, like, okay, Jesus, please just take this from me today. And sometimes he does, and sometimes he does not. And I think so far, like reflecting on pregnancy, I was just thinking about like, this is gonna be one of the lessons, I guess. Like I was like, well, what are you teaching me? Like, how is this, like, this is supposed to be this beautiful journey and process, and it is like there's a miracle inside of me. And I have these like cool like baby apps now, there's apps to track your pregnancy. And it's cool to see the development of my kid like inside me, like this fully living, breathing human, and that is part of me. They can listen, they're hearing, they're moving, and I'm going to be able to start to participate in that in the next couple of weeks. I'll be able to feel them move, and it's just, that is beautiful and that is joyous. But the nausea and the throwing up and the exhaustion that comes with it, it's not so beautiful. But it was just a good reminder to me that we can't do this alone. Like I can't do this without Jesus. There is no way that I would be able to be pregnant without Jesus. But I can't walk through this. I can't, endure this and get through the 9 months without leaning on him. And he doesn't give us more than we can bear with him. And so there is that need, like, I have to lean on you in this, and I have to trust, like, I was created to do this. You planned for me to be a mother, just as much as you have planned this child's life already, and their life and their name and their soul is in your hands, and you're knitting them together in my womb. And so I, just as much as I know and can trust that, I also know and trust that he has prepared me for motherhood, is preparing me for motherhood, and has prepared me for this pregnancy journey, and is walking with me through that. And I, can be sustained because of that knowledge, and trust that, I will have that strength, and I do have that strength because I can lean on Christ. So even through my suffering, even through pain, even through frustration and like not understanding why, am I okay? Like, is this okay? Like, is this normal? I can still be like, yeah, okay, Jesus, like, I trust that you have actually planned all of this out, and you know what tomorrow looks like, let alone today. And I don't need to worry about today, or tomorrow, because you have it. You have me in your hands, and I can rely on you. When I don't have the strength for today, I can turn to you for my strength. And that was just like, it's a good reminder. It's probably one that I need, which is probably why he has brought this on for me, to just like, hey, I'm here. you need me. Sorry, I don't know. It's going to be better if you just acknowledge that. So that's where I'm at in this journey. And it is beautiful, but it is hard. And I can't do it without Jesus.
Wow, you said a lot. In a good way, not like you went on and on and on. But I mean, I was thinking because, as we started talking about this conversation about God and our relationship, but I mean, it's really about our brokenness, isn't it? I mean, it's about just kind of our inability. And it's not that we're weak, and we are weak, but it's just that, that God is present to get us through. I mean, the reason why he shows up and stays with us is because he knows life is hard. I mean, that's why he gave us the gift of the Holy Spirit to say, I have an advocate for you. And so, if the expectation was that, hey, you guys, I died on the cross, your sins are forgiven, see you later, we'll see you in a few, whatever, millennial. But you know what? He's still here. And I think that the presence is to recognize that we are weak, right? And to recognize those things that we need help. And Kayla, what I loved about what you said is that in your pregnancy, you recognize the weakness, and the weakness is getting sick. But you pray, and it's not like, you pray that you're not sick, but you don't get angry with God. I mean, you're not like, okay, now I mean, maybe you do while you're throwing up, but there's this sense of like, I know this is part of the pregnancy. It's not like, hey, wait a minute, when I signed up for this pregnancy, I wasn't, but there are certain things that go with life. But I just appreciate it because I think sometimes we don't pray for our weaknesses. And so the fact that you say, I woke up and I prayed that I don't get sick. And you know what? Sometimes I get sick, but there's times where I can rejoice, but it doesn't deter you from that. So and even just everything you said, I think that because that's really life. I mean, you're in a season where that at some point there's going to be a celebration. And, and for us, that season is longer. I mean, we're in this lifelong season, and our birth is our death, right? I mean, but I love what you're saying. And I think it has a lot to do with, God's present. God is present with you. He is knitting, he is working. There's joy, there's life going on. Sure. There's, my wife went through, the diabetes, when you're pregnant, but she went through that, and she did what she needed to do. She didn't complain about it. She didn't say, how come me? But she did what she needed to do because that was part of the journey. And so, thank you for sharing that. And I think we can learn a lot is that, we're on this journey, and that it's not always going to be, we need to, I guess, expect that life isn't going to be easy.
Yeah.
We need to expand. Maybe that's what Epiphany is, to remind us that life isn't easy, but God has not abandoned us, that he is present with us to say, you know what? I'm here.
Yeah. Kayla, you bring up such a great point that the why, like you didn't keep asking why. And I was reading this because there's a culture within the business world, the dude, Simon Sinek, start with why. Well, the Christian, though, if you always start with why, you're always going to be then questioning God and doubting that God doesn't understand. On the cross, I was reading this from it's a great book, and people should go back and read it if they haven't, called The Jesus I Never Knew by Philip Yancey. And I'm reading it again, and I know a lot of people in the academic world would be like, oh, no. And that's the problem, is because it forces us into it. And one of the things that Philip says is that on the cross, Jesus never asked why. He says, God, why hast thou forsaken me? His why, though, is not a why are you doing this to me, right? Is the why is wondering about the forsakenness, but it's never a why. Oh, why me? Woe is me, right? Just like Mary, when she says, let it be done to me, there's not a, well, why me? Why can't it be someone else? Jesus's why is different from the way in which we ask whys today, and we start with why. And that's the problem that I would contend with Simon and say, hey, look, that's a great idea. Start with why, maybe for, the surface level, but really, and this is the thing that Christians have to come to grips with, is the why only becomes the question after the who. Who do you say I am, right? That the strength that you were talking about, Kayla, is about the who behind your confidence, right? About your trust. And so for the Christian, we can't start asking the why if we haven't already wrestled with the who, you know? And so Peter is forced into the question, not, well, start with why, Peter. Why do you want to do this? No, Jesus says, who do you say I am? Right. And again, on the cross, Jesus is not questioning the Father. Why are you doing this to me? He actually wonders, you know, the depth of the brunt of sin in that forsakenness, and he accepts it and embraces it for the sake of us. And so the cry out is that final dereliction, right? That final destruction of the Son by becoming a sin for us. And it's almost, his why is almost a look to us and saying, why are you doing this to yourselves? You know, my God, why have you forsaken me? Is almost a cry to the thieves on the right and the left, saying, why are you continually living in this way? Why are you forgetting the me? You know, why are you forgetting the who behind your whys? And Jim, I don't know if a lot of Americans are okay with the answer that I'm weak and I'm broken, you know, because we live in a culture of, look at the politics. Look at this weekend with sports. Oh my gosh, the amount of people who get so upset about sports and the cancellations of stuff because of COVID. I'm like, seriously, you know. But then same thing with politics. I've just been listening to these folks just like what happened a year ago. Absolutely. Like, that stuff is not okay, but it's not the core of who we are. Like, even if you were irritated and angry and offended by what happened on January 6th, it still doesn't make the people who did it evil, you know. And that side of the party line, they're just the same as me. And until I start seeing them as my neighbor, we're always going to be enemies, you know. And I think that we forget that Jesus says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor. He doesn't have to worry about enemies. Why? Because he on the cross said that the enemy is meant to be the neighbor. I mean, it's just and yet when we continue to ask why, we ask, but why? Why do I have to love him? Why do I have to love her? Why do they get in right now? Dude, I've been doing this for 30 freaking years. You know, they should get heaven, you know. And so it's always, but it's a comparison. And I can't remember one flaw, maybe it's Heidegger or C.S. Lewis or someone said, once we start comparing, we've lost, you know.
You know, I like, that is an important question, is that who? I mean, I wish this was last week, because then I could have put that into my message. But, you know, when you know, it's, I mean, when we look at Jesus's ministry, when it started off, at least in John, it starts off by John the Baptist saying, Lamb of God. And the two disciples are like, I mean, really their question is who? And they want to find out who Jesus is, right? And so they go to Jesus, and then Jesus turns around and says, "What do you know? Why are you? You know, what do you want?" Right? And you know, and so in Jesus's days, the discipleship was about knowing and understanding and learning and having the right answers, right? I mean, so it was like, you need to know the 613 commandments. Whereas Jesus, I mean, he's turning the tables and he's saying, "Come and see." And so, and then, but each person is it's that come and see. And I think sometimes, like what you said, is like, you know, we talk about the love of God because we know that people need to understand that they are loved and they're precious. And that's why, you know, that's the why. But it's, you know, but wow. But like you said, it's the who. Do we know who? And because who motivates the why? But, you know, and I was talking about in the context of, you know, like we talk about, what is it, sleeper movies? In sleeper movies, they show up, but then what the success of a sleeper movie is word of mouth. And when we look at John, Jesus gathers the disciples. He doesn't really gather them, but it's word of mouth, right? I mean, he doesn't really, there's only one person he says, follow me, but there's this word of mouth. But then when you look at all that group in that meeting, it's almost like the game telephone. And so, you know, John the Baptist says, Lamb of God, right? Into Andrew's ear. Andrew goes to his brother and goes, Messiah, you know, and but each answer is correct, but they're so personal because it's who for them what was important. And so for John, the fact that here is the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world, that was significant. That answered the who. For Andrew, it was the Messiah. It was the promise of the coming, and then, eventually we get to Nathaniel. It's like, this is the Son of God, because the who was important to him. And so, I think you're right. I think that we do need to address the who, but it's not necessarily with giving, it's not necessarily saying, oh yeah, this is why you should love God. This is why we should do this, because God loves you, right?
Yeah.
But it's to say, come and see
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. And I think that's hard for a lot of us to, especially in 2022, 21st century, when we say, come and see, experience God. I mean, let's be realistic. It's hard because the who right now is bound up in the church. And so we are meant to be the who. And when Christ says they will know you by your fruits, the why has to be birthed out of the who. And yet so many of us try to invert it. We try to love self so as to then love neighbor, hopefully to love God, right? And so we start with self first. And so we are starting with why. Well, why should I do this? Well, I'm supposed to be a good person. I want to get to heaven. I don't want to die alone, this kind of thing. But and those are the things that it ties right into, Jim, what you were saying is that people, they don't follow the movements, like the reason why you do something, if it's about an idea, an ideology, it's going to die. And I can't remember your exact wording. What was it that you say a lot of times? We follow like people's, and it's not about the movement or so, like
it's the relationships.
Yeah, the relationships, right? Like, and because if you're bound up in the why, then eventually the why fades, but the people don't, and so like if we're about movements in the sense of it's just about this ideology, well, when we accomplish that thing, then we move on. But if it's about the people, then there's always a lasting tie. There's that bond that never fails because it's about the who behind it. And when the who motivates the why, then that's when you see change. That's when you start to see people willingly, stepping up. And Bonhoeffer, it doesn't matter, I'm going to go against the grain. Some Christians are going to think that this is a bad act. Some people from the world are going to think that I'm crazy for doing this, that I could be killed, exactly what happened with Bonhoeffer. And yet for the righteousness of God, because it's the who, Jesus so often did exactly what many of us humans, and especially here in America, don't like to do, was he was silent. When they accused him and they criticized him and they went after him. And here's the dude who could have just snapped his fingers. And a lot of times he says, okay, if that's what you want, so be it. He never was. And I think that why, in the sense of God, Jesus doesn't question the why. He accepts it. Okay, why have you forsaken me? And he doesn't go back to God, because at that time, God, so this is the strangeness. The Father is embracing the Son, but God as himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, is crushing the second person of the Godhead, and all the while we are living there and we are at the foot of the cross. I mean, if we think about the cross, what does Jesus do? Jesus takes the representative of the church, mother, Mary, and connects her intimately with son or disciple, so the church is meant to be married to discipleship, and so yet if we have so many people always worried about the why, then hasn't the church failed in helping us understand? Because when we understand the who, it doesn't matter what you ask me, right? Those people in the Old Testament, in the Bible that we read, they're not made up. They're not characters in some sort of, play or a Hollywood performance, right? They're real people. And they had that faith to even step into, oh, fine, you want to throw me into a den of lions? Oh, you want to throw me into I sometimes go, well, wait a minute, Lord, you want me to go to this group of people that I don't know and talk to them about you? Oh, what if they think I'm like a little weird? I don't want them to think I'm a Jesus freak, Whereas these dudes in the years past are, oh, you want to burn me at a stake? Oh, okay, sure, whatever. I'm a little cold today, anyways. Like, and it's like I feel like us in the 21st century, we're like, whoa, if that's going to cause a little bit of discomfort or uncomfortability, I'm out. how do we manifest that though? Like what are we as the church missing that people aren't, because I feel like it's one or the other. If you're into Christ or into religion, you're just aggressive and obnoxious and you're like, hey, here's the Bible, you're a sinner. Okay, well, settle down. What you're saying is somewhat true. We have sin within us, but where is that love? And that's what I'm saying is like the who behind it, because this is no other God says, I am love. No other philosophy. We all know love, but we all don't know love, So in that question of who, I think also then the second question is then what is love? What does it mean to love? Because at least in my life, if I loved like Jesus, I'd be embracing people that, in my life that the church and everyone would say, dude, what are you doing? We don't want that within. I mean, we have to be careful. There needs to be discernment. There's children in this room. We have to be careful with who we love and who we expose them to, right? It's like, man, could you imagine if Mary and Joseph had that mindset of isolating their child and homeschooling him and keeping him away from the bad, And yet he leads them just as a child, even into the temple and saying, no, it's about the who. It's about this God who says that you are to love me so that you can go into the midst of the world and show them the redeemability and the goodness of the human.
You want to say something? Because I'm like overwhelmed. Every time Matt says something, or even it's like, okay, there's like way too many things here to address.
No, see, you're the one that overwhelms us, Jim, because we sit here and you're so clear. Sometimes I feel like the background when I'm looking at you just becomes like clouded because you're just clear to me. And so you're the one.
No, you know what I love about these conversations, though? It's kind of like it doesn't end here. I mean, it's kind of this, processing and thinking it through. But, some of the things, initially you talked about how does the world see the who, right? And so the first thing I think about, and, people are going to hate me for saying this because I know they don't like this guy, but Dr. Seuss, it's like Horton Hears a Who. I mean, how do we as this little village, and we really are on the eve of destruction. I mean, as far as, the world and what God has in store for us. But I mean, how do we get the who out, right? I mean, isn't that what it's about? It's about, Horton, and really the world is Horton. I mean, the world outside, quote, the church is Horton. And we want to just, it's not to save our lives, but it's to save everybody's life, right? I mean, and Horton, benefits from, and so it's kind of like, how do we get the who out? Or, how do we share the who, and then you talked about, so that's kind of like that, it's like the question I'm walking away with, how do we, in this time of lockdown, how do we, on our little space that we're given, whether it's, whatever platform we're on, how do we not give up in saying, that Horton would hear a who, that the people around us would hear a who, right? Or hear the who. And then you talked about, the other thing I was thinking about was, when you talked about Jesus and all the way up to the crucifixion or after his arrest, he said nothing, right? People wanted to know the why. Why are you saying this? Why are you doing this? Why are you? I mean, that's the why question. And I was thinking back when I was getting my, there's a guy that does, Keone does the tattoos. It's more of a spiritual experience. But I remember sitting with him. And this one person, he was sharing with them, and he's more of a broad spiritualist, but very wise. But he talked about the Hawaiian culture, saying, the Hawaiian culture has always honored women. I mean, women leaders were matriarchal is very important. And so this one woman, Western woman, says, "Oh, no. We're always like this." And so she kind of, so he goes and explains kind of this about Pele, a history of Hawaii, or the story of Hawaiians that are very important. And I'm like thinking, this is cool. I mean, he's sharing this story with her. And then so he he's done with the story. And then she just kind of like rebuffs him, right? And then she says, well, no, because of blah, blah, and she didn't hear him. But it was real interesting because Keone, as elders are, they don't argue. They're quiet, right? Because they're not ready to learn. They're not ready to hear. And I think and I started thinking with Jesus, I mean, we hear about be still and know that I am God, or be still and I will, fight the battle for you. And here's this, example of Jesus just being still. And, and so what came to my mind is, were the people not ready to hear the why because they did not know the who, and that they needed to see the who, right? I mean, for him to explain who he was, it was only going to get him in trouble.
Yeah.
And so he sits quietly because they're not ready to hear. And then you talked about Daniel and the lions, but I think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and that, as you're about to put them in the furnace, it's like, oh, you know what? Go ahead and do this. We think he's going to protect us, but you know what? Even if he doesn't, we know who the who is, right? And so they're based on the who. And so that's why they're able to go in the furnace. And then, like when you're talking about ranting and raving, or as Christians, sharing, and we're afraid of what people are thinking. I mean, I get back to John the Baptist. I mean, people thought the guy was a kook. And so now for him to start preaching all this, but he knew who the who was. His motivation was the who. So it didn't matter. His mission was about the who. His mission, it didn't matter what people thought of him, right? And so I think, and thank you, Kayla, for getting us kind of focused, but it is the who. I mean, it really, it is about the who.
Yeah. Yeah. Kayla, do you have something?
I was just going to say too, that when we focus on who Jesus is and we get deeper into who he is, it goes back to setting any resolutions for the new year, like we have to then focus on who am I and who do I follow, and both coincide, right? Like who I follow determines who I am, and that goes for 2021 into 2022 into 2023 4 5, so when we focus, when the who is the center of who I am, then we have a direction for life, and we can trust and know that like he's with us. Jesus walks with us. He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. He took on human flesh and blood to step down onto the earth, to walk with us, to be amongst us, and he leaves us his spirit. He leaves us constantly in his presence, so we are not alone, so we can trust in his faithful promises and know that year after year he will be faithful, and he will continue to be with us and continue to reveal himself to us the more we press into who he is. And then why do we follow him? Why is he so good? Why, then we can get into the why, but it does start with the who. And the more we get into the who, the better we understand the why.
Really quickly too, and we talk about the triune Godhead, and I think, is to realize how big the who is, right? I mean, I need to know, I want to know the who that Matt knows, right? Because my who is, my who isn't big enough, right? I mean, I've got this limited idea. And so if I think, oh yeah, this is my who, I'm limiting God, right? I mean, I'm limiting that triune Godhead. But if I say, I want to know the who of Matt, and I want to know the who of Kayla, I mean, isn't that what part of the journey is? I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
makes the journey, this come and see, that it's ever, just and you, like Kayla said, it's just that revealing, that revelation of seeing another part of the who, because even in our lifetime, we're not going to know the full who until we stand in their presence. But yeah, I think it's just that we need to maybe learn about everybody else's who, right?
And I think, and when we do that, then we can step in and be honest. Like, I know I love the Christmas story, don't get me wrong, and what Mary and Joseph did was amazing. But sometimes I think we put them so much on a pedestal that we forget they had doubts. They had such doubts that an angel of the Lord had to visit them, right? So they were like, dude, Joseph was probably, and Mary were just going, this is no, do you understand what you're asking us to do, kind of stuff. And I can only imagine those times of prayer where you're sitting there, you're like, Lord, are you kidding me? And I don't know. I think Joseph was a point where he was like, maybe I just can only imagine myself in that situation going, Lord, I get it, whatever, I'll follow you, but this is no, I'm not hearing you. No, this can't be true. This is so before we even, like, sometimes I have to be careful with myself and say, dude, like, the doubt doesn't mean anything about God in the sense that God is less. And it doesn't mean anything about me as a person, that my faith is nothing. Doubt is a part of who we are. And it's through that, then, because of what you're saying, Jim, because of when you sit down with me and we start talking about your who, like what Jesus has done and how he's lived through you, through the Spirit coming into your life, then when I hear your experience, it helps to lift me up to where I go, holy crap. Like, so you've experienced this like struggle or this tragedy or this darkness, and I'm something experiencing too. And then when you involve yourself in my life, you actually do what the scripture says is you're helping to bear my burdens just by simply, and that sounds crazy, but by sharing with me your understanding of who Jesus is, because as he's manifested himself to you and as he's manifested himself to Kayla, then it helps to build that, it's the whole analogy, we've all heard about it, in a dark room and we're all feeling these bits and pieces. We know that this is a big creature. Oh, I think mine's a tree. It's a big trunk. Mine seems to be a shower because it's spewing. And, when you turn the light on and there's 100 of us around this huge giant elephant. Oh, the elephant in the room, right? And I think that's the truth that we all forget sometimes is this is a story that's meant to be shared, right? But it's also a story that's meant to be lived. And so Epiphany, God presenting himself to each one of us, that revelation is meant to be incarnational. It's meant to be embraced and embodied. And that's what Jesus did. He saw the story of the human and said, actually, you're not appreciating it enough. You, the humans, are not realizing the goodness of who you are, your beauty and your truth. And so I am going to come and I'm going to take and swallow all the darkness by becoming it, sin, so that what? You can become the goodness of the human, the righteousness of God, right? That's what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5 at the very end, that he's given us this ministry of reconciliation. Why? Because we now, it's not like a second hand kind of, leftover. No, Paul says that you, Jim, you, Kayla, you, Matt, you become the righteousness of God. I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I like, the fact that you brought up the Joseph and Mary story. I think it is important because I think, everything's leading up. Mary has this beautiful dream. Elizabeth backs her up. Joseph has this dream. He's still kind of like, but then, they have Jesus. And, and I kind of picture like how lonely it would be if nobody showed up, right? I mean, you're away from family, but you know what? There they are by themselves. And you know what? If I were by myself, I would expect that there would be like a party going on. But there's not. And I think there's, and I think you bring up a good point, because I think that the doubt, not necessarily the doubt, but it's God's silence for whatever the reason, God remains silent,
Yeah.
But, when you look at it though, it's almost like, did the angels get the wrong address? They should have been, they should have been at the manger, but they're out in the field. But you know what though? But God was able to use that to bring the shepherds into the story. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, now you have the shepherds showing up to be the first people, to show up. And then they hear, hey, this is what we heard. And so, I think it's, that idea of community is so important, whether, the church community, even communities like, this community, just being able to come to conversations, because when those times, when God seems silent, we do need somebody to say, you know what? No, there's something good, and it's not necessarily we come in and say, oh, God is good. It might be just coming in and just being present with somebody, or just saying, you know what? I know what you're going through, and not giving any answers. But I think it's, what you said though, is the real life, that when God gets quiet, doubt sinks in, but being part of a community, it's, so then, you have these shepherds coming in, saying, hey, guess what we saw,
Yeah.
But there is that, and so I think that is so important. I think as we continue on, is that there is a community that we can find that. And I think what's important is that, and we've talked about this, is that we stay at the table. That's a beautiful thing about New Wine and New Wineskins. No matter your faith background, no matter where you're coming from, it's being able to stay at the table, to at least listen and to try to understand where the other is coming from, and to honor that.
Yep. And to do it together, to recognize that we need, this is, Nowen said it, and a couple, I think Malcolm Muggeridge, some other theologians said that, optimism is situational. Hope is stable. It is rooted in the one who is hope. And so this is a difference, that the world has optimism, and you have this a situational hope, where you go into the situation and you have this positive thinking, positivity, whereas the Christian no matter what situation is, there's always hope, because hope is rooted in the who of all history, who has come, and it's no wonder that the World Health Organization is who, because what? It's about our health. Well, the ultimate who, the great I am, comes so that we would be healthy. And that health is established in this relationship with our Creator. And that's the relationships that's meant for all of humanity. And that's, like you were saying, Jim, that's the truth about New Wine, is that we're seeking to help each one of us. Not one of us has any level of clarity better than the other, right? We do it together. None of us are closer to the truth of Jesus. We are all pining after him together. We're all searching. We're on this journey together, and we do it through our table discussions, our community discussions, right? That's what New Wine's all about building relational bridges. And those relational bridges happen like going across a bridge together or sitting down at the table together. And it's about the dialogue. But more than that, it's about the dialogue rooted in the who of the one who is word, deed, the one who speaks through actions of love, and the one who says, I am love, and come and be perfected in this bond of love. And so that's what we're excited about, for 2022, for New Wine Skins, is to continue to press into this, but to do it with each one of you watching, as well as the ones who might see this later on. As you know, that on Facebook right now, you just go right over to the New Wine Skins label right there, and then just hit subscribe underneath or like on the Facebook page. Also, you can share this video afterwards, after the live broadcast. It takes some time, but then it gets put back up, and we put up all of our videos on our YouTube page. So if you go over to YouTube /New Wine Skins, you can get caught up to date on all of the previous New Wine Uncorked episodes. And then we also have a podcast. And so just go to Spotify or Apple Podcast and look up New Wine Skins. And the podcast is actually called New Wine Cast, the New Wine listening experience. And so you can listen to all of the previous discussions that we've had, because dialogue is essential to our relationship. And like Jim was just saying, sometimes the most profound aspects of our dialogue is the silence, because things happen within silence. It's not a passive act. It's actually very active. And so we want to continue to press into this. The weeks ahead, we're looking into, well, who is this God who reveals himself to us? And what does that mean for us as the humans on the world stage today? And so we're so stoked that you joined us today. We look forward to joining us next week, every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on Facebook. You can join in on us, you can throw your comments up there, questions, so that we can have this interaction. But it's the process, this journey that we're all on together. And we're stoked that you are here with us today. Until next week, for Jim and for Kayla, we're looking forward to having Phil back with us next Friday as well. And so until then, we'll see you on the flip side. Have a good one.